So we will continue our discussion on economy. So we actually started off with the module balance of payment, and 2 sessions are already done in that module. In the first session, we talked about what is balance of payment, what are the different accounts, what is trade account, what is invisible account. Then we have also talked about capital account, okay, current account, capital account, and we have understood what is current account surplus, capital account surplus, what is trade account surplus, invisible account surplus. All these concepts I've done, and then we have also talked about a balance of payment summary of 2015-16, and I've discussed entire details with perfect data, and then I've told you what you mean by reserve change, how forex inflows there, how forex outflows there, how forex is actually added to BOP, and how the outflow is there. All these things we have discussed in detail, and we have also seen BOP equilibrium, BOP surplus, BOP deficit, all these concepts. And after that, in the second video, we have talked about the indicators of balance of payment situation, and we have given emphasis on forex, current account deficit, external debt, and we have discussed certain concepts like debt service ratio, capital inflows, the pattern of capital inflows, and then we have discussed about components of forex reserves, okay, and I've told you the hard currency SDR, RTP, reserve trench position with IMF, and gold. All these are the components, and I've given you the percentage wise distribution also of all these three. And then we have talked about the change in forex. What is the reason for change in forex? One is related to BOP, obviously, and then we have also discussed about valuation effect when we talk about change in forex. And after that, we have talked about some concepts like sovereign wealth fund and all, okay, and we have also talked about advantages of holding huge forex. So these are the things that we have discussed so far, and I'm covering entire UPSC syllabus of economy here. So we have taken each and every word from the syllabus and we have covered it, okay. So here in this session, I'll be talking about exchange rate systems, okay, different exchange rate systems, and what we have followed till 1992 and 1991 till reforms, and then after that what we followed, and everything will be discussed in detail, okay. So let's start with the session, exchange rate systems. Exchange rate system. The first one is fixed or pegged exchange rate system. So fixed or pegged exchange rate system. So what do you mean by fixed exchange rate system? I'll write it down first and then I'll explain. Under this, exchange rate is determined by the central bank, okay. So the exchange rate is actually fixed by the central bank. And if you remember in the planning module, when we talked about LPG, when we talked about Washington consensus, which we have signed between IMF and World Bank, I have told you there was problem with exchange rate, okay, and we have followed fixed exchange rate, this exchange rate system during that time. So even after this BOP crisis and forex shortage, our exchange was like this. $1 was kept as rupees 18. It was 18 rupee, okay. So this actually created a lot of problem during the time of crisis also. If it would have been a floating system, then rupee would have automatically depreciated, and to some extent some problems would have solved by promotion of exports, and through that you will get some forex and all these ways, okay. But it didn't happen because we followed a fixed exchange rate system, and after that, because of the conditions which was imposed by IMF and World Bank, we are supposed to change the system, and later we changed the system, exchange rate system, but at that time we actually went for devaluation of rupee, okay. So devaluation of rupee, and $1 we kept as rupee 24. For what purpose? It is basically to promote export, okay. So to promote exports, you actually went for devaluation of rupee as per the conditions of Washington consensus. And when you are devaluing rupee, foreigner will actually get more for $1, so he will obviously try to buy more, so exports will be promoted. And when you're exporting, Indian exporters are actually gaining more, so automatically it will result into promotion of exports, and that will ultimately bring forex to India. So this is one of the thing that we have done during LPG as per Washington consensus. Now here you see, let me write it down. What do you mean by devaluation? Devaluation and depreciation is different. Depreciation we will talk. It is actually happening in a floating exchange rate system. It is a market mechanism based on demand supply. Automatically rupee depreciate or appreciate. But when I talk about devaluation, it is done by the central bank. And revaluation, it is the opposite of devaluation. We'll keep like instead of this 18, we may keep it like 15, 12, etc. Okay, so revaluation or devaluation in this fixed system, and depreciation and appreciation, we discuss that when we discuss about the other exchange system, that is floating exchange system. Okay, so here let me write it out, write about this devaluation. Devaluation is the reduction in value of domestic currency in terms of a foreign currency by the central bank. And you know, we have devalued it 3 times. So one was in 1949, then 1966 we are facing acute shortage of food, famine, and even planned holiday was also announced during this time. If you remember, all these things we have discussed. And then in 1991. Okay, so these are 3 times we have done devaluation, and here we have done as per the Washington consensus. Okay, so what about revaluation? Revaluation will be the opposite of devaluation. So revaluation, it is the increase in exchange rate of the domestic currency in terms of other currency. Here we are talking about dollar, by the central bank. Okay, so this is what you mean by devaluation and revaluation, which will happen only in this exchange rate system. And we have devalued 3 times, 1949, 1966, and in 1991. And after that we cannot go for devaluation because we have changed our system. So there will be automatically depreciation and appreciation will happen. Okay, so we have devalued 3 times. Next we will talk about the next exchange rate system, that is floating or flexible exchange rate system. Okay, so let me write it down. What do you mean by this? Under this exchange rates of various currencies are determined on the basis of their demand or supply in the forex market. Okay, so in the forex market you will get the demand of that particular currency and supply of that particular currency, and the demand supply curve will be drawn like I have shown you in case of, you know, how to fix the price of share in a share market. You will take the demand of that particular share and you'll take the supply of that particular share, and you will draw the demand supply curve, and you'll see the point where it meets, and that is the equilibrium, that much quantities will be bought and sold. Okay, so here if you see how this demand supply is working out, so here we are actually talking about interbank forex market when I'm talking about this forex market. Okay, so let's take a demand supply situation here. Okay, now first of all you need to know who create demand. Okay, so here let me take on x-axis quantity of dollar, and here we will write price. Okay, price of what? Price of dollar in terms of rupee. Okay, so price of dollar in terms of rupee. Okay, so that is your y-axis. Now when you talk about demand of dollar, that actually show outflow of dollar. Okay, so demand of dollar, who will create that? Importers, right? Okay, so I hope you understood this. When I'm talking about demand of dollar, it is basically to pay outside, you need to pay in terms of forex. Okay, so actually this is going to be outflow of dollar. So importers need to pay the bill, so that dollar is going out. That's why I'm talking about demand is actually indicate outflow of dollar. Who create demand? Importers, mainly importers, not only importers. There are Indian tourists. I don't want to talk about the case where Indian tourists touring in India, so then there is no need of any dollar or anything. Okay, but here I'm talking about Indian tourists who's going abroad, so they are in need of dollar and they demand dollar for spending it outside. So again you can understand that the dollar is going out, so again outflow of dollar. Again, Indian investor, I am not talking about Indian investor investing in India, in abroad. Okay, and obviously this is very important, withdrawal of foreign investment. So from the share market or any other investment, when they're withdrawing and when they're going back, they will sell their shares in terms of rupee and they will get dollar back and they will take the dollar out. Okay, so that also shows outflow of dollar. So these are the people who actually create demand of dollar. Now who creates supply? Supply actually indicate inflow of dollar. Okay, so supply indicate inflow of dollar. Why? Because some people who are coming to India, they are in need of rupee, so they will give dollar and they'll get rupee. So that's how supply of dollar. So that is actually coming to India. Similarly, actually exporters mainly. So when you export, you'll get dollar and you will get that in terms of rupee, obviously. So that actually shows inflow of dollar. Okay, so that dollar is coming and then you can convert that in terms of rupee. Whatever it is, that dollar will be with the RBI. Okay, so RBI or authorized agencies. So mainly, if here it is importers, here it will be exporters. Okay, so are the main suppliers, and then foreign tourist who is visiting India, they will supply dollar and they get rupee. And the foreign investors, so foreign investors, when they are investing in India, they are coming with dollar. So that also shows supply of dollar or inflow of dollar. And then foreign remittances. So all these are actually etc. So all these here also, all these are actually the supply of dollar. So demand and supply will be created, and based on this, you will be drawing a demand supply curve. Demand supply curve we have discussed already in the chapter demand and supply. Demand curve look downward. Okay, there will be a downward sloping curve. So I'll draw this demand curve, and this is the demand of dollar. So let me mark it like this. Supply curve shows upward sloping, so it will go like this. So this is your supply curve, so supply of dollar. Okay, now so this is the equilibrium point and this is the equilibrium situation. So imagine this is the current situation. Now what happens is, let's suppose the demand is increasing. Now the demand for dollar is increasing, means what will happen with the demand curve? You know, if there is an increase in demand, the demand curve will shift rightward. Don't talk about upward and downward shift, that will only confuse you because you need to reverse when it comes to supply. But in case of increase, if you can understand, if you can take it as rightward shift, for demand and supply it is the same. If it is decrease, it is leftward shift. For demand and supply, it is actually the same. So it is better to understand in terms of rightward or leftward shift. If it is an increase, whether it is supply or demand, there is a rightward shift. If there is a decrease, whether it is supply or demand, it is a leftward shift. So here I am talking about increase in demand that will result into a rightward shift of demand curve. So let me shift the demand curve to right. So you can see the new demand curve here. So D1, demand for dollar, is actually shifting. So now what is a new equilibrium position? Because supply is not changing. If you want, you can talk about the case where supply is increasing, supply is decreasing, supply remains the same. I am, for simplicity, taking it as supply remain the same. So supply is not increasing, but demand is increasing. What will happen now with the price of dollar? You can see here, let's suppose this was 67 rupee for $1. Now you can see this is going to be the new equilibrium, right? So in this case, you can see the dollar, the price of dollar is actually increasing, maybe to 68, 69, like that. So what you will say here, demand of dollar is increasing. That means now you need to pay more rupee. Or in other words, you can say this lead to appreciation of dollar, or automatically you can say depreciation of rupee. So here what happened? Appreciation of dollar or depreciation of rupee. If demand of dollar would have reduced, okay, then what would have happened? The rupee would have appreciated, or that will not actually happen, or supply of dollar, if it is increased, then also rupee would have appreciated. Okay, so we can talk about that case. That is the reason why in case of more demand of dollar, RBI will pump forex so that supply will increase, so that rupee will appreciate and dollar will depreciate. That is one of the certain mechanisms that RBI can do, and that is why our system is known as managed float, not purely float. Okay, we'll come to that. So here we are talking about appreciation and depreciation, and we are not talking about devaluation or revaluation. So devaluation and revaluation is the concept that we have discussed in the fixed rate system, fixed or pegged exchange rate system. Here we are not talking about devaluation or revaluation. We are talking about depreciation and appreciation, which actually happens in the market based on demand supply. So you will talk about the demand of dollar. Who create demand, you understood. Who create supply, you understood. Take the demand curve, take the supply curve, see the equation, see the equilibrium position, and if the demand is changing, based on that, if supply is not changing accordingly, there will be a depreciation of rupee or appreciation of dollar. So this is how the market mechanism work. So I hope this is clear for all of you. So now we'll write what is depreciation or appreciation. So depreciation is actually reduction in exchange rate of a currency due to change in its demand and supply in the forex market. Okay, so this is what you mean by depreciation, and same as the case of appreciation. So there will be, instead of reduction, increase. Okay, so that's about depreciation and appreciation. So what about impact of depreciation? Impact of depreciation and devaluation will be actually same. Impact of appreciation and revaluation will also be same, just that the name is different. One in case of fixed system, the other is in case of floating system. The concept is same, the advantages, disadvantages, or actually the impact is same in both cases. Revaluation or appreciation, depreciation and devaluation, impact is actually the same. So here, if you talk about the advantages of depreciation, see, even if it is happening, there will be some advantages, and that is the reason why China always devalue their currency, because of certain advantages. We will come to that later. So, and obviously there are some disadvantages also. So let me write down the advantages first. Advantages. So first one, it promote exports. Okay, I've told you export becomes competitive, and you can the foreigners will buy more. Secondly, you will get more money. Okay, when you are getting $1, when rupee depreciating, earlier you are getting 67 rupee for $1, now you are getting 68 rupees, so you will be automatically trying to export. So here also there is a motivation to export, and they will buy more also. Okay, so it promotes exports as exported commodities become cheaper in terms of foreign currency. Okay, so earlier if you are spending 1 rupee, you are getting 67 rupee worth item by a foreigner. Now you spend that $1, you will be getting around 68 rupee worth item. Okay, similarly, tourist will also come more. Earlier you were getting 67 rupee for $1, so maybe 670 rupee in case of $10. Now you are getting 680 rupee for the same $10. So what you can do, you can spend that 10 rupee extra. Maybe you can stay in a better hotel, or maybe you can have some better food. So more foreign tourists will also come. So like export increase, for tourists also will increase, because these things are getting cheaper now, okay, for the foreigners. Secondly, it discourages imports. So discourages imports as imported commodities, what will happen? It will become more dearer, because now earlier you were paying $1, and for that, actually you need to spend 67 rupee to get $1. Now for paying that $1, you need to pay 68 rupee. So effectively the same product, when you're importing, despite the fact that it is costing $1, earlier in terms of Indian currency, you need to pay 67. Now you need to pay 68. So it becomes dearer. So you may not import often. Okay. So imported commodities becomes dearer in terms of domestic currency. So these are very important from prelims point of view. This is very important. Those exports are promoted and discourages import. Those 2 points are very, very important. So I hope you understood the reason. Okay, so these are very, very, very high or very important impact of, depreciation. Okay, or the advantages. So overall, what will happen when you are promoting export, you are encouraging export and discouraging imports, so the current account deficit will automatically reduce, okay, which is desirable. So the trade deficit and current account deficit, if you remember, I have discussed this in balance of payment in detail, what is trade deficit and what is current account deficit, and everything we have discussed. This will decrease. Okay, it will also promote what? Foreign remittances and foreign tourism, because why foreign remittances? Foreign tourism, just now I have told you, you are spending $1. Earlier you are getting 67. Now you are getting 68. So you can spend some, luxury hotels or something like that. So that's why, and you can spend some good foods, etc. So foreign tourists will come. Secondly, foreign remittances. When you are sending money to India, earlier you are getting 67 for $1. Now you are getting more. So you will send more money. Okay, that will actually help in increase in forex. So all these are very, very important from prelims point of view. Again and again, I'm stressing you will get questions, concepts related question only from my notes. You don't want to read anything apart from these notes. Okay, so that's the way it is covered. All the topics, all the areas are actually covered. So the current values, the data you need to update from economic survey. Apart from that, concept wise, no need of anything. So it promotes foreign remittances, inward foreign remittances, and foreign tourism. Just writing like this only, foreign tourism. Okay, so automatically what will happen? It tends to increase the forex reserve and it will strengthen BOP situation. So forex increase and that lead to strengthen what? BOP. So this are the advantages of this depreciation of rupee. What are the disadvantages? Let me write the disadvantages. So disadvantages, actually I have